This is a production of WKNO Memphis. Production funding for Sports Files is made possible in part by the WKNO Production Fund, the WKNO Endowment Fund, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
My guest today on Sports Files is the CEO of the Memphis Grizzlies, Jason Levien. He has been on the job for less than a year, but the impact Grizzlies CEO Jason Levien has made on the organization is immeasurable. Levien was brought in by new majority owner Robert Pera to run the day-to-day operations of the team, and he jumped in with both feet. Recently, the Grizzlies were named by ESPN The Magazine as the #1 organization of all the Big Four professional sports. Now, don't get me wrong, there are a plethora of factors that go into that type of recognition, and many people are involved, including the obvious, the players themselves. But it all starts with the head honcho. Levien made critical on and off the court decisions that helped mold the organization. He was instrumental in bringing in national figures and local personalities to join the ownership group and help develop a game plan to expand the reaches of the team to the entire Mid-South, including Nashville and Little Rock. Levien also made the tough decisions with player personnel. He dealt talented Rudy Gay to Toronto and was criticized by many for doing so. He had to deal with the fallout from the trade, assuring fans the team would now be more equipped for a long postseason run. And the fact of the matter is, the team advanced to the Western Conference Finals for the first time in the history of the organization. Perhaps it was luck, perhaps Levien has the Midas touch, or more likely he simply knows what he's doing. And now he hopes to prove in season #2 that his first season was no fluke. Today, we put the full court press on the man calling the shots for the Grizzlies, CEO Jason Levien, next on Sports Files. Well, Jason, thanks again for being with us.
Thanks for having me, Greg.
Great to see you again. The hits just keep on coming for you guys. The recent ESPN The Magazine story that has the Memphis Grizzlies as the #1 professional franchise in all of sports. How about that?
Listen, it's something that this community should take great pride in. The Grizzlies have only been here 13 seasons, and what the community has accomplished in embracing this team, what the team has accomplished in getting this community and this region really excited, it's something to be proud of.
Did you have any idea that was coming?
A couple of weeks ago, they sent some reporters to come see us in Memphis, and so we knew that we obviously did pretty well in the ultimate standings, but it was confirmed just a few days before it came out that we were #1 out of 122 franchises in North America.
I saw all the criteria, and I understand where they're coming from, bang for your buck, obviously the experience for the fans, ownership, and it goes on and on and on.
Title track?
Exactly. The performance on the court, of course, last year was just a phenomenal year. But to be honored like that, what's been the reaction from people in the community to you about this, and why do you believe you are the best?
Well, I think it's the community is excited and energized by it, as we are. It's going to take time for it to set in that we've achieved this goal, but we've got a long way to go, and so I don't want to rest on our laurels. I take this as motivation that we can do even better. We've got a lot we can do to improve the experience in the arena, to improve our basketball team, to improve our entire organization, how it interacts with our fans. And as connected as this community is with this team, we want to make it even a deeper connection, and that's what we're working towards.
I know one of your major goals, in fact, when I first spoke with you, when you arrived here in Memphis, I know that the light went on and you said, we got to regionalize this team. It's not just Memphis' team, we got to make sure we get out. And then you had the Grizzlies Caravan that made stops in places like St. Louis and Nashville. And you are really stressing to try to get these fans from outside the area, St. Louis, Little Rock, Jackson, Mississippi. Talk about the efforts.
There's a large region geographically where we're the NBA team for. And we've got to embrace those fans. We've got to embrace them in a way that brings them to our arena, makes Memphis a destination they want to come visit and go to our games, and also have them watch them on television. So we've done caravans. Quincy Pondexter's been leading the charge. He was up in St. Louis.
Right.
Tomorrow he's going down to Jackson, Mississippi. We did have that caravan in Nashville, and it did extraordinarily well last March. We oversold. We had to get more buses to bring more fans, so we're going to do more of that. We're also going to be on television in Little Rock for more of our games than ever before. And part of that is that we're pushing the boundaries, getting more people in the region interested. But the other part of it is that there's that interest already, and there's an excitement level. Our television ratings in Nashville last season were really strong. We want to build upon that, and we think we can do that.
I know a few years before you arrived, training camp began for the Grizzlies one season in Birmingham. This year in Nashville. Is that another reason why the regionalization of the team that we talked about?
Absolutely. I mean, we want to be Tennessee's team. We want to be in Nashville. We want our fans in Nashville to experience our players, our coaches at a very important point as we embark on the season. I think it's a good opportunity for a bonding opportunity for our players as well to be away together for a few days in a different environment. And we have some new additions to our team, and we want our guys to get closer. We want our coaching staff to get closer. It's one of the reasons that we just came back from a retreat we went on with our coaches and our front office so we could all spend some time together and really had some good bonding time.
You put together an incredible run last year. You go to the Western Conference Finals. You're a step away from the NBA Finals. The team performs incredibly well. The fan base came out. But yet you don't live off your laurels, and you start to make moves in the offseason. And we'll talk about some of the personnel move. But the big move, obviously, was with the head coach. And we've talked about this before, why the move. How has Dave Joerger embraced it? And how confident are you that he will get the job done?
We have the utmost confidence in Dave. He has been terrific this summer. He's been engaging. He's got a lot of positive energy. He's come up with new ideas for how we can improve our offensive efficiency, for example, which was the bottom half of the league. Even though we had such great success, it was primarily based on our defensive efficiency.
Right.
We need to get better offensively. He's brought in some great minds, we think, on the coaching staff. We're going to announce that soon. And we think we're putting together a very solid organization, and Dave is going to lead the charge as our head coach, and we have a lot of confidence in him.
Moves. You made a number of them. Are you done?
Never done. The work is never done. We're constantly trying to get better. And that's, like you said, we had a great season last year, the best in franchise history. But we had to pivot from that and focus on how do we get better? How do we get better on the floor and even in terms of the FedEx Forum experience? And so on the floor, we've made several moves that were important this offseason, starting with trading for Kosta Koufos on draft night.
Right.
And then drafting Jamal Franklin, recruiting and signing Mike Miller, bringing in Nick Calathis. We think all those moves are going to be important for us. And probably biggest of them all was re-signing Tony Allen.
Exactly.
That was a huge priority for us. The impact that he makes on our team is tremendous.
The one question mark when people look at the Grizzlies is, do they have enough shooters? And while you went out and looked at a number of different options, you bring back a familiar face in Mike Miller. How much does he have left in the tank?
Mike looks outstanding right now. He's in great physical condition. I think his body's pretty rested because they didn't play him a lot in Miami. They rolled him out in the NBA Finals and said, make big shots, and he did it.
Right.
We're going to need him to be an everyday player for us. We've told him that from the beginning. That's what he wants to do. He looks terrific. We think he's one of the best 3 or 4 shooters in the league. And his IQ as a basketball player is really great. He's a good rebounder. And I'll tell you, the biggest influence he's had already in his short time back with our team is off the floor. He's got an enthusiasm. He's very talkative. He's a guy that players look at and they say, well, this guy has 2 rings. He's been in the NBA Finals the last 3 years. And he's the first guy in the gym, the last guy to leave. Mike's working his tail off, and it's a big impact he's going to have for us.
What do you think the biggest questions are in camp?
I think we really need to figure out how we're going to play a backup point guard position. Mike Conley logged a lot of minutes, did an outstanding job. I feel very confident that Mike's going to take the next step in his career growth trajectory. He's on pace to have an outstanding season. He's going to do that. We need support behind him. We brought in Nick Calathis. Nick had a great career in Europe for 4 seasons at the highest levels. Right. He's coming off being the MVP of the Euro Cup last season, but Nick's got to do it in the NBA level, and we believe he can perform. We also know Jared Bayless is coming back. Jared did a great job for us making huge shots all season long. He may play some point guard as well. So that's an important place for us to solidify things. I would also say our shooting the basketball on the wing. You're right, Mike Miller, we need to make sure he's healthy, and he's going to deliver for us in a big way. And certainly Marcus Sol logged more minutes at center than any center in the NBA last year. And we think the addition of Kosta Koufos is going to make a big impact. Costa started 80-plus games for the Nuggets last year. They were the third team in the Western Conference at the end of the season into the playoffs, and he's going to be a valuable addition. So looking at our roster, I would say that we're deeper than we've ever been, and we've got some real weapons. And another big addition for us is going to be Ed Davis, getting a full season under his belt with us. He had a terrific offseason, really worked hard. I think you're going to see an improved Ed Davis this year.
Yeah, going back to the Koufos trade, which, by the way, I really like, and I know a lot of people like, but also I would imagine in the back of your mind, you're trying to find a way to get Davis more minutes. And if Darrell is still around, would those minutes come? So now you're able to get a solid backup to rest Mark, but also get an opportunity to see a guy who you brought in last year through a trade in Ed Davis.
I think that's right. I think we had, between Ed and Darrell Arthur, both guys are very good basketball players, and there probably weren't enough minutes for both players at that position. I think Costa is a guy at just 24 years old that he's got a lot of growth left in him. He was a very effective player, as I mentioned last season, but his work ethic is very visible. His professionalism is there, his character. And so I think Costa's going to get better. He's 24, Ed Davis is 24. Those are two young big men that we really like. And I will tell you this, don't ignore John Lore. We brought John Lore back. We traded for him in the middle of the season last year. We think he can be an effective addition for us.
I know you went after Mo Williams. I know there were some others that you went after. In general terms, what's the reaction to free agents out there about coming to Memphis?
I think it's changed. I will tell you, a few years ago when I was in the agent business, players would go to Memphis, but oftentimes in free agency you'd have to maybe overpay them a little bit to get them to come to Memphis.
Right.
And I think that's changed because they see players want to win, and they want to be in an environment where the fans are engaged and excited and enthusiastic about the team. And I think they see what's building here in Memphis. And it was really a watershed moment when a guy like Mike Miller, who could have gone anywhere, was recruited heavily by Kevin Durant to go to Oklahoma City, was recruited by his former coach, Kevin McHale, to come to Houston and to play with Dwight Howard. And for Mike Miller to look at the Grizzlies and say, listen, my number one priority is getting back to the finals after I've been there 3 years in a row. And I believe coming to the Memphis Grizzlies gives me the best opportunity to do that. I think it was a watershed moment for the franchise. Mike Miller took less money to come to Memphis than he could have gotten elsewhere. He wants to be a part of something special.
As the CEO of this organization, do you have any issues with, in this case it would be Marc Gasol, but any player wanting to play for their country?
No, I believe that we're required contractually with FIBA, the NBA, is to support players who want to play for their country.
So you don't have much of a say?
We don't, and we're supportive of it. Certainly you get nervous about injuries, but I also, having represented players who were the first player from their country to come to the NBA, such as Hedo Turkoglu and Omri Caspi in Israel and Turkey, I understand the pride factor. I understand the importance of international competition, representing your country, what that means, not only here in the U.S., where our players do it, but also abroad internationally.
You run both the basketball and the business operation of this franchise. What changes, what different things are we going to be able to look forward to this upcoming season?
We want to improve the experience of the FedEx Forum. We brought in a new chief operating officer, Jason Wexler, a Memphian for the last 18 years, I believe, who's done an outstanding job in just a few months on the job. He may have been our best off-season acquisition, actually, Jason. And we're bringing local businesses and restaurateurs into the arena. I think you're going to get a different sense for the arena, and it's going to take time. But I think as good as the FedEx Forum is right now, it can get better, and we want our fans to experience that.
Is it a prerequisite that you have to be named Jason to work for you?
Basically, Jason and Dave maybe are the two most common names.
What have you learned most about yourself as the CEO of the Grizzlies in the course of this year?
I think I've learned how to sometimes take a step back and empower others to do things that normally I'd want to be a little bit of a control freak about and do myself.
Right.
I think we have some outstanding people working in the organization, and we're all focused on the same thing. We're all loyal to the same thing, and that is being the best. And really that goal is something we strive for every day. And so I think I'm learning every day how to take a step back and how to empower people to do things.
As I mentioned earlier, you didn't live off the laurels. You didn't live off what happened last year. You went out and you made changes. And some of those changes were tough. I mean, you had to make a tough decision with Lionel and going with Dave Joerger. And I'm sure you got a lot of feedback from fans with that decision. Things have died down. Obviously, the summer has gone on. How important is it to start the season on the right foot? Because if for some reason this team stumbles out of the gate, you know those people are coming back at you.
Well, it took me a few months before I could take my sunglasses and hat off when I walked around downtown Memphis, Greg. But no, seriously, listen, I think it comes with the territory. We want to be the best, and sometimes you have to make decisions that aren't popular for everybody. We want to be forward-thinking and forward-looking about it, and so we don't want to rest on our laurels. And how do we continually grow as an organization? How do we get better? And we felt as though, making the Rudy Gay trade, adding players like Ed Davis and Tayshaun Prince was important for us. We thought, allowing Dave Yeager to assume the role of head coach would be an important step in the right direction for us. And with those decisions, they're going to come criticism. And we need to embrace that criticism, and we need to address it with our fans, because our fans are very well informed, and they're thoughtful, and they're passionate. And the best experiences I have had is when I've engaged fans in discussions about, well, here's why we did this. Now, maybe we're wrong. No one has a crystal ball.
Right.
But we put a lot of time and thought into this. We didn't do it in a knee-jerk fashion. I've been criticized also for maybe moving too slowly on some of these decisions. But we want to be very careful, very thorough in our approach.
There's no question that, at least in my opinion, obviously your opinion, that you've improved with the moves you've made on this team, on this roster. But other teams in the West appear to have improved as well. What are your expectations, and what's your overall thoughts of the West without getting too specific?
I think it's going to be a dogfight. I think you've got San Antonio and Oklahoma City, which are elite level teams, certainly. Houston had a big overhaul, getting a player like Dwight Howard, adding him to an already talented playoff roster.
Right.
I think Golden State, which was so exciting to watch them play late in the season into the playoffs, added Andre Iguodala to their team. They had a few guys they lost, and Jarrett Jack, certainly, and Carl Landry, but they're going to be very formidable. And certainly our nemesis, the Clippers, got better.
Right.
They've got an outstanding coach in Doc Rivers, who's won championship. They've got J.J. Redick and Jared Dudley on the wings. So it's going to be a dogfight in the West, and we've just got to be prepared. I think Minnesota got a lot better as well.
I think so as well.
And they're healthy now, so they're going to be a tough team. So there aren't too many easy games in the Western Conference, if any. Everyone's tough, and certainly teams got better this year.
Final question, only have about 30 seconds. Robert Pera, we've seen him a number of times this summer. Will he be more visible this season?
I think so. I think he's really enjoying the experience of being our chairman and controlling owner. I think he really has embraced the city and this team, and he wants to be around. He's also running a multi-billion-dollar company.
He sure is.
Very successfully, I might add. So he's a busy guy, but this is a passion play for him, and I think you're going to see him more and more. Congratulations on being #1 in sports. That's pretty incredible. Best of luck to you, Jason. Always great to talk to you.
Thanks for having me, Greg.
Thank you so much, Jason.
We'll take a break. When we come back, it's overtime. Back in 2009, Mark Newman was voted a legend in Memphis running. He also won the Memphis St. Jude Marathon back in 2000. Today, he is a world champion triathlete. On October 12th, Newman will take his talents to the Hawaiian Ironman Triathlon, and he's been training exceptionally hard for it. Earlier this year, he won his first world championship, taking top honors in his age group in the Ironman 70.3 Worlds in Las Vegas. I sat down with Mark after a recent training session to find out more about what makes this graduate of the U.S. Naval Academy tick and why he still enjoys the competition. Mark, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure being here.
We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Mark, you went to the Naval Academy. You started running long-distance marathons for Navy. How did that go? And then, of course, parlaying that into trying to make the Olympic team as a marathoner. You were involved in 3 Olympic trial events.
The whole experience, I mean, the whole running aspect of my life is just like a heartbeat. I don't know what I'd do without it. And I was fortunate enough to go to Navy and ran very well there. I was a conference champion. And after I got out of the Naval Academy, went to do my overseas duty as a pilot. When I got done there and ultimately got out of the Navy, I decided I wanted to resume the running career because I felt like I had a lot of unfinished business. And one of the goals at that point in my life was to try to make the Olympic trials in the marathon. It was a pretty lofty goal, the time standards that they have set, and it took a couple years to get there, but that's how it all started.
Well, you obviously had the bug for it and you want to continue it. As we talked about earlier before we started this interview, you ran and you swam as a young athlete moving up. Now you're done college, you eventually come to Memphis to work the FedEx, but you want to continue with your long distance running. You win the Memphis Marathon and you've really taken off from there.
Yeah, what happened was I was really excited to win the Memphis Marathon. That's a story for a different day about how that all came about and the guy that I beat on at the last step across the finish line. But when I noticed the running career started to kind of wane and the legs started to slow down, I wasn't as competitive as I wanted to be anymore. A couple of my buddies said, hey, you know, you got a swimming background, right? I said, yeah. They said, you got to get into triathlon. And one of them was Corey Horton, who, bless his soul, passed away a few years ago. But he was one of the ones that really encouraged me to get started in this sport. And I do a lot of that to his memory and his encouragement. But I finally decided just to go all in back in 2009, 2010, and it's really worked out well.
You won a world championship not long ago. You're now 50 years of age. How did you do it?
Persistence, hard work, dedication. I tell my wife all the time that I'm not the type of person that just enjoys working out just for working out's sake. I always have to throw a goal out there. So when we realized the success that I had the first year in the triathlon world, you know, I said, I think I can win a world championship at this at some point. So I hired a new coach. We went at it and had a couple injuries along the way the last couple of years, but this year it finally all kind of paid off.
As a youngster, you started out running and swimming, but you didn't have the biking background. So what would you say your weakest discipline is?
By far the bike. Having the swimming background that I never thought would come back to help me, and the running background, of course, my bread and butter is just getting out of the water first, or as close to first as possible, hanging on the bike. On the bike, I know that my competitors are going to pass me. And most of them are very strong, experienced cyclists in their own right. So it's really hard for me to be patient enough to let them go. But I know they can't run. So if I can get off the bike, like at the Half Ironman World Championships, I got off the bike 6 minutes behind the leader, and my wife was tracking me on the iPad on the Ironman.com website. She told me how far behind I was, and it was, let's go get them.
Wow. You want to now take that world championship you won and parlay that into a world championship at the Ironman. Everybody knows that those two words, that race, Ironman. What would it take to win out there in Hawaii on the 12th of October?
Being very smart again. You know, we're talking about world championship, obviously my age group, being that I'm 50 years old and I'm not a pro. But I've looked at the competitors, I know what their strengths and weaknesses are, and if I put together a really strong swim, do the thing on my bike, not get too overzealous on the bike, and just get ready to run, I think I have a great shot at it.
It's a family affair for you. You mentioned your wife. I know your daughter's a competitive swimmer. You are involved with teams, running teams and swimming teams and all that good stuff here in Memphis. So it's not just you out there on a mountain by yourself.
No, and you know, it's funny, my wife and I, who acts as my manager, my domestique and everything else, she's awesome. You couldn't do it without the support of her, and obviously my little 10-year-old girl, Allison. They ride their bike with me when I'm running on my long runs. They feed me water, feed me the goose, feed me everything I need. And not only do I, you know, ride for 901, run for Pilgrimage, and race on behalf of Memphis Thunder, but all the other competitive organizations out here, it's a community sport. We all ride together, we all work out together, and if I were to start thanking everybody that has helped me in this endeavor, we'd be here till tomorrow morning.
So Mark, barring any unforeseen injuries, how long can you keep this going? How long do you want to keep it going?
Well, the first time I did it, I told my family I was done. But then I felt like I had some unfinished business. My goal was to win a world championship. I've done that. This will probably be it for serious competition. I hope it goes well, and I'm going to give it everything I can, but it's time to focus on my 10-year-old, let my wife get back to some sort of normalcy. My older two kids have been wholly supportive. I mean, it's been awesome.
All right, in our final seconds, explain to people the rush that you get from competing.
how do you describe it? Everybody talks about the endorphin high and all that. I think for me, it's setting the goal, knowing how hard you got to work and getting there. And the ultimate is crossing the finish line, knowing that you achieved your goal.
Well, Mark, thank you so much for joining us. I think it's a fascinating story. Best of luck in Hawaii and the rest of your career.
It's a pleasure being here. Thanks for having me.
On the gridiron, the Memphis Tigers have a bye week after a resounding 31-7 rout of Arkansas State last Saturday. Freshman tailback Marquise Warford rushed for 173 yards, and Brandon Hayes here added 114. Next up for the Tigers is an October 5th home game versus Central Florida. And that'll do it for the show. Remember, you can see any of our previous shows by heading to our website, WKNO.org, and clicking on KNO Tonight. Have a great week, and we'll see you next time.